But sometimes those moments are I mean, not sometimes, a lot of time there's a reason for it, right? If you're maybe waffling between, okay, I am going to go freelance full time or, back and forth. And those moments of, like redirection are for a reason because it's like, okay, like, let's just knock you right to where you're supposed to be. And at the
Yeah.
time you're like, oh my God, maybe not you, but like, I would have been like, what the fuck? I don't know what to
Oh
do.
my
Like,
god, it was like very stressful. It was
yeah.
super stressful, and I look back at that time and it was a huge learning lesson, and you forgive and you forget, or I don't forget. You forgive and move on.
Something tells me you don't forget.
You forgive and you move on, and it's like that's just a part of my story, and I learned from it, and I hope that that person learned from it as well. But um, yeah, you have to have boundaries.
Welcome to Graphic Content, the podcast where we talk all things who, why, and the what the moments along the way. Today's guest was born in Toronto, Canada, one of the most multicultural cities in the world. At the age of 23, 4 years into a banking career, he tried yoga on a whim, which changed the trajectory of his life forever. After completing his first teacher training in India in 2008, he returned to Toronto and started teaching. The choice to leave banking was instinctual. Over the last 18 years, yoga has led him across the globe, living and teaching in Singapore, Bangkok, Hong Kong, San Francisco, Cape Town, and now Brussels. He shared his passion through his retreats, workshops, and teacher trainings across Europe, Southern Africa, and Southeast Asia, which have led him to today, where he is the founder of the My Mates yoga app. Welcome to Graphic Content, Bruce Chung. Yes!
Thank you. You did it. Thanks, Gio. Thanks for having me. Actually, I also lived in Dublin, and I just want to say that but I say that because, like, actually, Dublin was such a special place to me. So I just want to give a shout out to Dublin and all the Irish people out there.
So what was special about it? Like, give me a bit of context.
I sort of just ended up in Dublin. I When I left Singapore, I had actually accepted a job to teach in Sydney, Australia.
Mm.
And like my flight was ready to go. I had the studio and the contract signed. And there was a little bit of a buffer, not buffer, there was like a bit of a window between leaving Singapore and having to go to Australia. And I found this teaching gig in Dublin. A studio had just opened up and they needed help. I was like, I can do that. It was like a combination of arriving to Dublin, kind of experiencing something. I don't know. Maybe it was just at the right place at the right time. I needed a sort
Mhm.
of like a grounding that Dublin offered. But simultaneously, the studio owner that I was about to go work for, she and I just weren't seeing eye to eye on a few things. And I was like, I am not going to cross three-quarters of the globe to work for someone who I know is going to give me a really hard time.
Yeah.
And so I kind of just made the choice to kind of give up that job in Australia and stay in Ireland. So I was there for like 6 months.
That's nice. And honestly,
Yeah.
I vibe with you 100% on the wasn't meant to be storyline because at the end of the
Yeah.
day, like you have to kind of let go of certain things where you're like, okay, this is like that's a far trek to be
It's yeah. No, it's
miserable.
exactly.
So right now you're in Brussels, right?
Yes,
And
I'm
how long
here.
have you been there?
I've been here just over 5 years. And it's really interesting because of all the cities that I've lived in. It's the place I've been the longest. I don't know if I should like say it. I mean, it's like it's meaningful for me. It's meaningful to me in that it's like it's home. It's become home. But it's like not my favorite city.
That's okay
And
for you to say. You can be honest.
yeah, I know, but I just feel like I don't want to shit on it. For it to like not be my favorite city, and compared to all the other places I've lived, it's like the least interesting as well. So I do find it quite ironic or interesting that I've lived here for as long as I have.
It's such a process to move, especially if you don't have someone who's sponsoring you.
Exactly. Any city that I've moved in, I've had to be helped by a specific studio.
And so right now you have your own practice or you're working with a studio.
I work for studios for as long as I've been teaching. I think I realized very early on that I never wanted to own my own studio, as I've had friends own studios and I just worked close. I mean, I've worked with so many studios, I know the amount
100.
of grunt work that's required and how it really takes away the passion of teaching. And that is my passion. My passion is teaching.
I can imagine though, because there's like the business side of any business, right? Especially if you have a brick and mortar where
Mhm.
I always say this, like I'm in business, but I'm not a business person.
Yeah.
I love the creative aspect. That's where I thrive, but it's the admin side that I'm always like, I need someone to help me on this because it's just not where I thrive, let's say, or I
Yeah.
excel. And so I can completely understand where you're like, I just want to teach. Like that's where I get the most joy from what I do.
Yeah, for sure. And for the most part, it can be quite challenging. Studios, they're everywhere. Of course, I have friends who own studios and they have been quite successful, but it's kind of just timing. They
Hmm.
got in at the right time and are thriving. Whereas I know studios who are just being really challenged. Obviously, there's so many different factors.
So what originally brought you to yoga? Like where did that path come from?
It was a very long time ago. I was 23, so 20 years ago. And one of my friends back in Toronto was like taking me to all of these extreme, I'm going to call it like extreme sports. Like we went skydiving, he was taking me rock climbing. And I remember one day he like rang me up and he was like, "You have to try this thing with me. It's hot yoga. It's like really intense." And I was like, "Okay, I'm up for anything."
You went straight to that? You're like, "Not regular
I
yoga, we're gonna"
no, 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 for sure. Which is also like interesting because it's the first thing I knew, so it was like that was the bar.
Yes.
And it was actually my practice for many years. It's what I taught for the first few years, hot yoga. But anyway, so it was kind of like that introduction, and I always tell people I didn't. For me, it wasn't like an aha moment. That first class,
Mhm.
as I remember it, I was like, yeah, very disconnected from my body. Didn't really understand class or studio etiquette. Was all over the place, but it was just something that sort of over time started to really take effect or shape. Where I started to kind of think, I think there's something more to this. Something more to this.
What was the bridge from that first class to eventually saying, "Okay, this is something that I want to have as a recurring thing in my life?"
Yeah, I think like at that time, I was in my early 20s, living on my own. I had like, I don't want to say like a rough childhood, but just like adolescence was really, I mean, adolescence for everyone was really hard. I can recognize that, but just like having some family stuff. And because of all of those factors, I just found myself a pretty angry young adult.
Mhm.
I was smoking a lot, I was drinking. And I say all of this because after practicing consistently for maybe 6, 7 months, I started to really pull back on smoking. And, also this a desire to drink decreased. And I think even one of the biggest thing, and I always remember this, is just actually how soft I became.
Yeah.
Being kind to strangers. And I say that, and it's like, yeah, of course, obviously you would be. But if someone knew me back then, like, I was like not the nicest. And so once I started to experience these changes, especially the one about being kinder, because I had held so much anger, or I held anger for so long that I thought it was just who I was,
Mhm.
to be able to experience this thing where, like, oh, actually, there's this softer side to me in there. And I intuitively feel that it's a result of a regular practice, but I was like, yeah, there's something a lot deeper here. It's really powerful, and it's something that I'm like super keen to explore.
I can relate 100%. I think around the time I met you is when I started actually taking yoga seriously.
Yeah.
And after I moved back from Toronto, I also think just living in a big city, if you are on the brink of, not necessarily knowing or having coping mechanisms to deal with your internal landscape, let's say if it's not 100%.
Yeah.
And I know like when I was living in Toronto, I had people who close to me saying like, "You're so rude. Like you're so like you have so much sass. It's like nonstop, incessant." And I'm
Yeah.
like, I underneath, I'm like, I'm not that person. I'm not an
Yeah.
asshole. I'm not a bitch.
Yeah.
And so, going through that process, like, I can completely relate to it.
For sure. And I mean, like, big cities have that reputation. Like, I was in London last weekend, and I have to admit, actually, it was a lot. I'm gonna like, keep using the word softer. It was a lot softer, and my friend who's local said that basically people did start to soften through the pandemic.
Hmm.
But as I remembered it, those last few times that I had visited, like in the mid 2010s, part of why I stopped going to London was just people were very rude and very aggressive. And naturally, as you've just said, like big cities just have that effect. Everyone's like, gonna hustle. They got places to go. They don't got time to wait.
Hmm. The impatience piece, that has been something that I've lovingly set aside. I'm like, I don't need this
Yeah.
anymore. I don't need to be in a rush or anxious about everything that's going on. I can
Yeah.
let things flow a little bit and allow myself to ease into life and not be so like, Gah!
For sure. And I think for me, especially coming from Toronto
Hmm.
and also living in so many different cities, like mega cities like Bangkok and Hong Kong,
Yes.
what I've realized through my travels is just how much I connect with a smaller city. Of course, that's like relative, but like living in a smaller city, just there's the element of having, urban living, but not the same pace that a metropolis would.
Hmm.
And it's like so interesting too because people here all the time are like, "Oh my God, Brussels is so fast paced," and I was like, "Girl, you don't even know what fast paced is." Like, truly.
Having lived in so many different places, like you are kind of a nomad. I'm not even kind of.
Yeah,
You've been a nomad. So,
yeah.
what would you say that that lifestyle has taught you beyond just your yoga practice, like just living all over the world?
For starters, how adaptable I am. I also think like one thing that I try to teach in my classes is that we are adaptable beings and that the resistance to it or the inability to connect with that is one's resistance to change. So kind of talking about impermanence and change being constant. So I think adaptability, I think my like love of culture and being able to experience living in different cities and experiencing that culture that's so different from like home, but then at the same time, because Toronto is so multicultural,
Hmm.
it's also in a way familiar.
Yeah.
I think it's really this like this awe that I have with our planet, with our world, and the many people that we have on here that we kind of like live with. And in a way, as different as like cultures seem, at the end of the day, or ultimately, we all kind of want the same things. For me, that's just really beautiful because there's so much, obviously, like, yeah, there's so much pain in the world around differences. And I'm like, yo, we all want the same things.
Oh, I say that all the time. I think to myself, let's say, if we're looking at this from like a more spiritual approach, we come from the same place, we go back to the same place, whatever that is. In my from my perspective, I'm not Catholic or religious or anything like
Yeah.
that, but from a spiritual standpoint, I'm like, we're all the same thing. Maybe we're the meat suits that we've rented during our time here might look different. Culturally, we are a little different, but we're human at the end. It's that saying like we're all the same on the inside, and that's the one thing that allows me to get through this weird time that we're in. I'm like, we're all the same. Be compassionate even to those who might not have compassion towards you.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, you hear it a lot in many spaces, but I guess also because I'm so much involved in the yoga space, but it's like be kind because no matter how you see someone from the outside, everyone is carrying something.
Oh, I thought you were gonna keep going. I was
That's
like,
it. I was like, did the mic stop?
no, no, no.
That's as far as my wisdom goes.
Keep going. I want to keep hearing. But no, you talked about like shifting of energies. And so I feel like, especially in today, we kind of approach things, everything is so like black and white, left, right, up, down. Everything's like dual. There's sides. But if we look
Mhm.
at like, let's say, masculine and feminine energy, and you were mentioning a little bit about how you've softened through
Yeah.
your practice. Talk to me a little bit about that and when you started to kind of feel that process, because I feel like through our like yoga practice, you definitely feel that softening of let me not, it's not so much like let me push myself, like at the gym for example, where it's like such a masculine attempt, even in life, right, where we're like, let me be productive, let me be like, let me go and reach for my goals. And the opposite of that in life, how have you found that's applied to you?
I mean, there's so many teachings that I've had
Hmm.
from my practice, but everything requires balance. And energetically, like we have yin and yang, and even like the if you can picture the yin yang symbol, it's like not completely divided in half. It's like sort of yeah, there's like this swirl, and then actually on each side of the yin and yang is the opposite, sort of like saying that where there's yang there's yin and vice versa. To be able to understand one of these opposing energies or one of these dualities, you have to be able to know the other.
Hmm.
And it's like, I think it becomes maybe, I don't want to use the word problematic, but where like issues can come up is if you're just leaning too much into one of these particular energies. Like,
Yeah.
as you were just saying, like with the being productive, which is very typical of our modern society, where there's like also pressure with like hustle culture, and even just the way we interact with technology, we're constantly stimulated, and so we're unknowingly or maybe knowingly under a lot of stress. We're just like always under stress, and so then that's just leaning too much into, if we were to like divide it into masculine and feminine, but like a masculine energy or a yang like energy, because stress is yang, then people get burnout or it can lead to illness. And it's like the way we can nurture and soften ourselves is if we like be aware of where we're at and then try to lean in more to being softer, particularly as I said, like with what's happening today and sort of the pace of life that we live in. But at the same time, if you're too much in like yin and everything's kind of just like really slow, you can end up also being like sedentary, and so you need maybe a little bit more of that fire, a little bit more of that yang. So I just feel like throughout my life, I'm kind of always toggling between the two. And one thing that one of my really good friends of one of my really good friends who she's actually a friend of mine and also like a teacher of mine. She has so much wisdom. She's like, Bruce, you work so much. She's like, stop working. She's like, well, not stop working, but she's like, really, you need to scale back on your teaching schedule. Whereas I'm like, I love teaching.
Hmm.
Yeah, I love teaching. I also love my lifestyle. And
Yeah.
so, in order for me to support the way that I live, I need to like work more. So then I'm also like living in this sort of contradiction of like what I'm teaching. So I'm just constantly, it's like being aware of the choices that we make and how, and then just trying to like navigate your day to day.
Yeah, and that's totally fine. I think it's okay to contradict ourselves when it comes to how we live our lives. Like I'm the kind of person that, and I can only speak from my own experience, but I love to work hard. I sometimes find validation in like work itself. And so I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, I want to do everything and I want to push myself and I want to do all these things. But then at the same time, there's that side of me that's like, she's dormant a little bit, but there's that like party animal that's like, I love to have a night out and get crazy. And going back to the little blip of the yin in the yang and
Yeah.
vice versa, it's like I look back to my life 10 years ago and I was like, I was crazy. Like the
Yeah.
that I did, I'm like, could never be me today. But now I'm
Yeah.
like, every once in a while there's a little sprinkle, a
Oh
little
no, for
sparkle here and
sure.
there.
Yeah, exactly. Which is, welcomed.
Yeah, you need that honestly, because I'm like, I work
Yeah.
so much. And so in your own life, you're talking about, you love your lifestyle, and like how do you kind of coincide those two things where, because you're the type of person who from the outside, like I look at how your career has, I mean, I've known you now for what, 8, 7 years.
Yeah.
Um, and I look at, you are the type that I talk about this with a lot of people where we are able to design the life that we want.
Yeah.
We have so many tools at our fingertips, regardless of where we live, how we live, etc., that we can kind of set ourselves up to live in ways that benefit us as individuals. And you have been the type of person too, you've really created your own blueprint for how to live
Hmm.
life.
Hmm.
And like
Yeah.
very commendable. I look at you and I'm like, this person is doing what so many people think that they can't do. What made you kind of move into this path where you're like, I'm not going to go traditional route, like I'm going to do my own thing?
So when I was back in Toronto, going right out of high school and starting to work for a bank, and just by circumstance ended up staying there for 7 years. Kind of at some point being like, this does not feel fulfilling.
Mm.
And at that time, I was practicing yoga. I had been practicing yoga for about 2 years, I would say, 2, 3 years, and like one of my friends and one of my mentors was like, I think you would do really well by becoming a yoga teacher. And second to that, like I had a strong desire to like live abroad. I wanted to like live overseas. All of my friends were doing study abroads or like working holiday visas. And I was like, this, it just sounds so exciting to be able to experience life overseas. And he was like, if you become a yoga teacher, I think this is going to be your ticket out of Canada. And so that was kind of like one of my first motivations to do the training. But when I completed the training, I was still working full time at the bank and kind of having my like one foot, what's the phrase? Like having one foot in both sort of
Yeah.
careers or professions. It became quite clear which one was fulfilling.
Hmm.
And so I also kind of like attribute it to just being 26 and kind of like, I can do anything.
Yeah.
And I think we need to kind of have some of that like youthful mentality as well. But I was like, I want to do something that is going to make me happy. And so it kind of started there. And then I ended up getting this job in Singapore and I moved to Singapore. But I think really when I think about it, it was just like for every time I decided to leave a city, there's definitely timing, but I think as well it's like this need to survive. Growing up with like a single mom and in the 80s, it was like really hard for her. So you can say like to the equivalent of like Canadian standards, we lived in poverty.
Hmm.
And so I think quite young, I learned what it meant to be in survival mode. And so in a way, I've done really well, but that's because I was like, I need to work.
Yeah.
And so I used that sort of fuel to be resourceful. And it's like at no time was I ever faced with, or anytime I was faced with having to like leave country or the potential of losing a job, I was like, okay, well, what else is out there? Who can I be in touch with that's going to help make sure that I'm not out here unemployed? And at the same time, of course, it's like for me, it came quite naturally. It's not like I was actually giving it any additional thought. I was like, this sounds like a great job. That sounds like a great place I'd like to like explore living in. Things kind of fell into place.
It's those moments of resilience that teach us how to adapt in the future. But I find it refreshing because you're approaching life in a way that you are like, yeah, here's a problem. Let's say, bunny ears for those who are
Yeah,
listening. Here's a problem. I'm just going to act. I'm going
yeah,
to make it happen and just solve the problem and not be focused so much on woe is me, oh my god, like why is this happening to me, and just
yeah.
making it happen. And at the end of the day, that's really how we should always approach life in general.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I've had many people over the years be like, you're so courageous, you're so brave to like do what you're doing. And I'm like, it just doesn't, it feels so natural to me. It's like, I'm not thinking that what I'm doing is courageous. I'm like, I just want to live my best life.
I'm finally getting to a point in my life where I'm like, what are we doing? Like and I say this every episode almost, I think, but it's like I'm nearing 40. I'm not getting any younger. If I want to do something, I need to do it for myself,
Mhm.
just to say I
Yeah.
tried and not be so stuck in fear, because look at the world around us. We don't even know what we're going to be waking up to in 5, 10 years from now. So let's give
Let
her.
alone tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I was trying to be hopeful and not be so pessimistic, but you know what I mean? I'm like, I'm just like, just go and do the things that if you have this thing in your heart, just go for it. I don't know what else to say. And I
Yeah.
love that you just do that. And it's
Yeah.
very inspiring, honestly.
Thank you.
I've been seeing it online for years and I'm just like, Bruce is really doing the damn thing. Like I don't know how else to
Oh,
say it, but it's
yeah.
it's amazing to see that there's somebody who, without even trying, you're probably inspiring a ton of people because you're doing
Mm.
so many things. You're living all over the world. You speak multiple languages. Like you're out there just living your best life. Like that's really the best way to describe it. You hit it on the head.
That means so much to me. And I just want to correct you because I speak one language only.
Oh, okay.
But I have the ability to speak multiple languages, if that makes sense. I'm not proficient in any, but I have enough vocabulary to get by in many countries.
Well, your social media is misleading then because the way because you're always using words in different languages. I'm like, "Oh, wow, he's really, like,
I
cultured." I'm
do.
like
I love like that's the thing. Like when I'm traveling, I love picking up words, and I think I do have an ear for it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I love it, honestly, and keep doing it because it's one of those things that I don't know, like, this is my blow smoke up your ass moment, but I just, like I
I'll welcome
think
it.
it's What?
I said I'll welcome it.
Seriously, it's just you see so many people, especially, as we're getting older, that become so rigid in who they are. There's no room, like you said, there's the masculine where it's like this rigidity and this is who I am, take it or leave it. And they don't
Yeah,
allow themselves to think outside of that there's perception of self to say, I can add this extra hat, or I can wear a different hat today, or I can have a different title, or live a different aspect of myself because we're so multidimensional that how to be one thing all the time. It's like our parents' generation where
yeah.
they worked at one job for 35 plus years, retire, and that's it. I'm like, I could not imagine doing one job my whole life.
That said, I mean, like I appreciate that it can be very hard to
Of course.
make change, especially as you say, if we think about this demographic, this specific demographic of like older. Are we now in the older demographic?
I mean, to some,
Um,
yeah.
oh my god. That's yeah. The longer that you are one way, the harder it's going to be to turn away from that.
So to the people that you work with, that you teach, that you've interacted with through your practice or just in your day-to-day life, if you come across that energy from someone who, of course, if they're already moving towards having a yoga practice, they're already open to somewhat of a change, whether
Yeah,
they're consciously making that decision or not. So
yeah.
how do you approach people who are maybe a bit more rigid in how they view the world, like I said, whether it's in your practice or outside of that?
I've learned that you can't impose views or perspectives on someone. You can sort of share what you think, and you can encourage them what to do, but ultimately everyone has their own agency. And I think when you or I just do the thing that I'm speaking about or trying to teach them, it's like an embodied experience that people can sort of see and choose to like say, that's something I would, even just this idea of like, I would like to try what that's like, or, oh, I can never do that. But when it comes to the yoga practice, I have been teaching 18 years and I firmly believe that it's a powerful, when there's consistency and regularity, that there's
Mhm.
power in it, that you don't even necessarily, you don't necessarily need to teach beyond the physical poses for change to occur. And so it's like that person's on their own path. There's this saying that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. So even though I might be in front of them
100%.
and what I'm saying, it's like they may not be ready to hear what I'm saying. So when they are ripe and ready, then that information will land.
Once again, on the money, I feel like a lot of times when you can interact with somebody and they can give you some tidbits of information or, guidance and you're like, okay, whatever. But then when you go through like those like the premise of this podcast, like this, like a what the fuck moment where you're like,
Yeah.
oh my, and then it makes you rethink and that information that was said to you in the past can resonate a little bit stronger. And so, have you had any moments along your trajectory where you've been like, what the f- is going on? That's kind of like shifted your path or made you rethink of, who you are in the world?
I've thought about that question really hard. And the one that really sticks out to me is I was working for a studio some years ago, and during a time where it was really challenging for the entire world, this studio essentially they presented it to us as being the teachers as us having an option to redirect our government aid to them.
So they stole from you.
So there's like a little bit of coercion, and I was like, "What the?"
Hmm.
And I have to admit as well, like I was newly arrived in this city, and so there was like a huge dilemma that I was facing. It's like if I don't participate in this request, I could potentially lose my job, which means I potentially would have to like leave. But I was like, this just does not align with what I feel is right.
Hmm.
And so I took a stand and I just said, like, I'm not going to be redirecting these funds that are to me in my name, which kind of led to like a huge unraveling whereby I ended up going from working for someone to working for myself or becoming more freelance. And when I say
Hmm.
working for someone, like I was full time for a studio, whereas like, yes, right now I work for people, but they're my clients. I'm a
Yeah, it's
freelancer.
different. But sometimes those moments are there's I mean not sometimes, a lot of time it's there's a reason for it, right? You if you're maybe waffling between okay, I am going to go freelance full time or, back and forth, and those moments of like redirection are for a reason, because it's like okay, like let's just knock you right to where you're supposed to be. And at the
Yeah.
time you're like, "Oh my god." Maybe not you, but like I would have been like, what the I don't know what to
Oh
do."
my
Like
God. It was like very stressful. It was
yeah.
super stressful. And, I look back at that time and it was a huge learning lesson. And, you forgive and you forget, or I don't forget, you forgive and move on.
Something tells me you don't forget.
You forgive and you move on. And it's like, that's just a part of my story. And I learned from it. And I hope that that person learned from it as well. But, um, yeah, you have to have boundaries. And even when having a boundary or even when standing in your integrity can really shake, like it was really scary to be like, I could potentially get fired and also have to like leave country,
Mm.
but this is absolute BS. I'm not participating in this. So it was like a huge, yeah, it was like I was so conflicted, but ultimately I chose the thing that was like aligned with me, and here we are.
And so what was that transition like during that period where, you're working for someone, you take a stand and you say, "F off, I'm not doing this. You guys, this is
Yeah.
wrong." And then
Yeah.
suddenly you're, "Oh, I got to figure this out."
Yeah, so I mean, there was like it wasn't like there wasn't immediate action taken against me. There was like a lot of back and forth. There was a lot of pressure, and I stood my ground. I did have to seek legal action, but the exit wasn't immediate, but it was imminent. The universe is always trying to like get rid of people that aren't serving.
Oh.
But you got to listen to the sides because people sometimes will just like stir in their be like, I can't leave. Which, again, depending on circumstances, I
Mhm.
understand why some people
Yeah.
make the choices they do. Because it is a privilege also to be like, I hate this situation and I'm gonna leave. Some people don't may not feel like they have that power.
Ugh, I just think about my own life. Like it's all I can compare. Like that's the only thing that I've lived, right? And so many times where I've been in situations where I don't agree with how things are being done. I'm like, this is and you still stay there. Even when I left Toronto and I was thinking about moving back, and I knew for myself, like I know that the vision that I have for myself, which is where I'm at today, truly, I won't achieve it if I stay. Even though on paper
Mm,
everything was, you know,
yeah,
you're being brought to the next level of this job, you're gonna get a raise, you're gonna get all these things and benefits and all of these things that from a young age, especially North American culture, we're programmed to think this is what we have to do. And I
yeah.
was like, I hate this. And now
Mm,
so thankful for these situations that have made me kind of realize, and I'm also very lucky in that I grew up with parents who have their own companies, so I was
yeah,
grew up in that entrepreneurial spirit. And I was like, girl, this is not for me. Like I can't
yeah,
do it. I don't
yeah,
want to do it.
for sure. I mean, even in the context of like teaching yoga, I think in general, the yoga industry, people are freelance.
Mm,
But when I lived in Asia, and even here when I first moved to Brussels, I like to refer to them as like big box studios,
hmm.
studios that essentially hire you to work full time. And in a way, there's security and stability. And I did that when I was in Singapore, Bangkok, Hong Kong. I did that when I first moved to Brussels. And so you're kind of assured um, between 13 and 15 classes a week, which on the one hand is like great for the stability, but at the same time, it really pushes you forward very quickly on your teaching experience. And I think as well, like when I think back on my career, those earlier years in Asia are really like what gave me the skill sets that I have now. Like teaching that much basically gave me so much experience to navigate the teaching space. Like going away from that was like, yeah, it was like I don't want to say the natural next step, but it's like those working in those corporate settings served me, but I need freedom. I need to be able to call the shots. This is my career. I'm tired of making money for other people.
It's so interesting for me as somebody who's not in your world for you to even refer to obviously big box as corporate, because even though
Yeah.
it's yoga, but you're like corporate yoga, but that does exist. That is very much
Yeah.
a thing.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit about working for existing brands, let's say companies that are stamped, they have their franchises all over the world, or
Hmm.
wherever they're located.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so for the last few years, obviously before even you were not working for other companies, but you've been building your personal brand. So it's been,
Yeah. Yeah.
through the Bruce Chung Yoga entity online. Recently, like you've talked to me a little bit about working on the app. That in itself is an extension of your brand. So tell me a little
Hmm.
bit about the
Hmm.
timeline of where that came to be and what made you want to start this venture.
I have wanted to have an online platform or to teach online for at least 10 years. I remember in the early 2010s, there was like a short period where I was nomadic, like literally not living anywhere. At that time, there was really only two or three big yoga platforms, and I was a subscriber and ended up becoming the student of one of these teachers, who I like loved practicing with. And I remember being like, "Wow, this is so cool to like be a teacher online." And just sort of like as the years went on, kind of even towards the end of leaving Hong Kong, when they were ready to launch their online platform and they invited some teachers, including myself, to film for them, I was like, oh, this is like really interesting. And then I had tried to reach out to these bigger platforms to teach and, didn't hear back from them. And so I was like, well, I don't need to teach for someone. I can do this on my own. But, late 2010s, sort of in the earlier part of the pandemic, I don't know if I was like discouraged, but maybe I just didn't have enough faith in myself or that bravery to be like, I can do it. It was always just this idea. I'm like, this year, you're going to do it. I even like had friends to try to keep me accountable, and it just never really happened. But finally, my partner, very early on in our relationship, I had told him like that was one of my dreams, and basically the gift that he is, he like really encouraged me to finally get out of my own way and work on it. And what I thought would initially be like a web-based platform, I ended up crossing paths with someone who was speaking about apps, and they were connected to an app developer. And I spoke to the executive, and she obviously sold it to me as being, sort of the way forward. I was like, okay, I can consider an app, and that sort of like pushed me forward into to launching my own, or at least working on launching my own.
And so talk to me a little bit about that process, because you come from a place where you have a YouTube channel, you have an online presence, you post on your Instagram. And so what was that process like, and like what did it teach you about creating a brand that really makes sense for who you are as an instructor, as a teacher, and as a human?
Yeah, I mean, with regards to my YouTube channel and social media, what's been so challenging for me with those two things is that I'm not consistent. Like there are so many times where like I hate online.
Yeah,
I
oh yeah.
cannot be I can't. It's too draining for me to pour my energy into it. And so that's been, I would say, a challenge for me with the app, because I'm being held accountable by my subscribers to
Hmm.
constantly show up, not offer them, but like create for them those classes. And so when it came to My Mate's Yoga app, I just really wanted to have a centralized space that I could also monetize,
Hmm.
unlike YouTube, because yeah, I was also thinking, after working or teaching for nearly 20 years, where primarily or always I had basically exchanged my time for money, I just thought it would be a good professional decision to move into the online space.
That's why I'm doing the podcast. To me, it's a way where I can't do the hard sell of,
Yeah.
hire me and this and that. And I also don't feel comfortable recording content where, it's like, here's 5 tips on how to do branding. Like I keep saying that, like that's my example, but it just doesn't seem authentic to me. And so, you think about in a world that is becoming 100% online, let's be real. Like we're moving
Mhm,
so
mhm.
much into the digital space that it's
Yeah.
at this point, if you're not doing it, like what the are we doing? You
Right.
know? First of all, I want to ask where did the name come from? Like my mate's yoga
Yeah.
app. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
where was inspired that?
I can't take credit for it. It was my boyfriend.
That's fine.
He's very clever. But I think because I was saying it first started with a conversation around I don't want my platform to have my name. First of all, I wanted it to be something a little bit more, well, definitely more general.
Hmm.
And we were just kind of spitballing ideas. And he was like, I feel like there's a brand where they say it's like my uncle or like, Aunt Jemima, or I know
Hmm.
a modeling agency in Cape Town. It's called My Friend Ned. And just this idea of like, it's your friend's something. And he was like, what about my mate's yoga app? And then he's like, and then it's also like a conversation starter. It's like, oh, I use my mate's yoga app. And then someone's like, oh, who's your mate? And you're like, no, my mate's yoga app.
Yes, I love that.
So yeah, I loved that. I just thought it was like pretty catchy, and with the idea of having something that wasn't my name, I've noticed over the years that definitely there are teachers out there who use their name, and when it does really well, it's because they just happen to be a yoga celebrity or a yoga celebrity, as I like to
Mm,
say. But for the people, like myself, maybe who don't have such a massive following or who aren't known globally, they tend to do really well when they create more of a brand that is separate from themselves. And at the same time, I wanted it to be separate from me because I did want it, or I sort of envision it growing beyond me, where I have actually other contributors and other teachers on the platform.
I'm going to go back to what you said, where you're like, oh, I'm not known globally. For somebody who has taught in so many parts of the world, Bruce Chung, you are known globally. You
Okay,
are
thank
known
you.
globally. Maybe you like, and I'm not saying this to be like to fake a smoke up your ass moment, but it's the
Yeah.
truth. You have literally affected so many people around the world. You have a
Mhm.
following. As for somebody who has even less of a following than you, like by quite a bit, to me, you have what I'm striving for. So,
Mhm.
no matter at what stage of the game that we're at, you are inspiring people in your own ways. So to kind of downplay it, like I'm just saying that to be like, girl, relax. Like you're doing great. You're impacting people.
Aw, thank you. I feel like tingles in my heart.
Good. I'm glad. I mean it, seriously. Like think
Yeah,
about it. You've
thank
taught
you.
everywhere.
Yeah, that means so much to me. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Hey, I mean it. So as far as the name, so now as somebody who works in branding, 100% the smartest idea was that not using your name. I think that
Mhm.
it's important, especially like I did the same where I'm like, my name is in the title of my business, but it's not
But it's so
geo.
catchy, and
I
it makes
know.
sense.
Yeah. Oh, when it came to
I was
me,
like, graphic content, I was like, "Oh, this man's a genius." Or geographic, obviously, when we first met, I was like,
yes.
"This man, give him an award."
It was like months. It took me, I think it's 6 months. I had a notebook and I kept writing ideas and like I was thinking of like everything from like for geographic specifically, where it was like Sasquatch and like the like with two S's like sass, like a
No,
sassy
I get it.
Sasquatch. Like I was thinking of like all these different names, like geo design. I was like, oh my god, I hate all of these. Like I
Yeah,
knew in my heart of hearts, I'm like it just has to be that aha moment. And then I remember
it's so
writing it.
clever.
I love that I waited and I didn't just run with something that I just thought, yeah, this
Yeah.
will do. Like it's important, especially if you're trying to establish a brand that you see being bigger than what it is now. And that's so going back
Mhm.
to what you were saying, I think that there's a lot of opportunity down the road where, like you had mentioned before we hopped on this call about having other people film content and having like a team of people that represent the My Mates Yoga app brand.
Yeah, yeah. And even just to have yoga app in the name I kind of also envision like hopefully people search yoga app and somehow it's bumped up because of SEO results. So that's kind of like where I want it to be.
And this could even be bigger than that. Like this could
Yeah.
be like my mate's fill in the blank app,
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
mate's scheduling app, my mate's whatever app. Like you could
Mm.
grow this beyond. See, like this is my world, right? Like
Geo.
I'm like, how do we make more money?
Okay, yeah. We need to talk.
Yeah,
How can
listen.
let me book me an appointment.
I'm always down to talk shop. You know that. Like anybody who's like, "Hey, like how do we make more money? Let's do something." I'm like, "I'm in."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So where do you envision, like I know I just kind of like threw this out as a joke, but like where do you
Mhm.
envision the future of My Mate's Yoga app going?
I don't know if I can call it a rebrand, but I actually recently hired someone, a brand agency, to help me tighten the brand, sort of in order to get the app out there and not overthink it. I hired someone on the fly to do just the logo. I didn't go through like the full branding process. And she hooked me up with the logo. It's great. I love it. Put it out there. But now that the now that it's out there in the ether, and I'm like, okay, now that people I have subscribers and I'm kind of getting a handle on like what I'm offering, I was like, let me hire a branding agency to really get clear on everything else.
Hmm.
So we've worked, and I'm really happy with what we've gotten done so far. We've worked on getting clear on like my mission statement, my brand, my values, but even just this idea of like what the vision is. And I wanted to be able to help people all over the world with whatever it is that they need help with, why they're turning to yoga, why they're turning to mobility, whether it's to like rehabilitate their body, to feel good in their body, to connect to their body, for them to de-stress, for it to be like a partner in their day to day because it's helping in some way. I also, in that vision, it's like I want to be known as globally a top yoga app,
What would that mean for you to be known?
to have like credibility, to also be on these like random, very subjective lists that different people issue. It's like top 5 yoga apps.
Hmm.
Check them out. And then the why is because it's like expert knowledge, but accessible in its delivery. And amongst myself and anyone else who I invite on the app, I want them to be world class, top of their game. And I'm lucky to be peers with many of these people already.
Like, have you had anyone give you like pointers or any sort of feedback on how the app is or anything like that?
So I've had subscribers give me feedback, but I haven't had any of the experts chime in. If anything, it's been more like it looks great from the outside. None of these experts have actually have gotten in deep.
So,
Yeah.
having known you now for so many years, and obviously through our conversation, you're very intentional with how you speak, what you say
Yeah.
in your work. When it comes to we're talking on the topic of branding, what does branding mean to you? Like not just beyond the visual, like what does it mean for you as an ethos?
I feel like it's a representation. It should like evoke an emotion of some kind, grounded, which I do feel already I do just by nature. I feel like people often tell me, you're so calming. Being around you, I feel like really calm. I know that for some people, it can make people, I know that for some, it makes them very nervous.
They're used to frenetic energy.
Yeah, they're like, you're really calm. It's making me uncomfortable. I'm like, okay, well, that says more about you, but
Yeah, 100%.
um, and in a way, like inspire them just through what I'm doing with my life or just how I live. So the app's already online. You can find it in the App Store on Google Play. You actually can access the app via the web, which is also great. So it's like not restricted to app use. There's a
Love
couple of
that.
functions that you can't that are app specific, but for actually utilizing your subscription. And as far as like the rebrand goes, I think probably by the time we're airing, everything should be kind of like rolled out.
Beautiful. So people can go find it. And where can they
Yeah.
find that?
My Mates Yoga app is available on App Store, Google Play, and mymatesyoga.app.com.
Beautiful. So, what kind of impact do you hope that the app has? Like, not just for your current community, but for people who haven't necessarily found out who Bruce Chung is.
I really want people to see. or experience yoga differently than how they might perceive it.
Mm.
For them to experience something that is like breaking stereotypes. And also because I do integrate a lot of mobility in my teaching, the importance of movement in health and longevity.
And it goes back to what we talked about, our perception of self, and how sometimes there's a certain level of rigidity in how we identify as, in this world, and who we are as humans. The work that you're doing is changing people. Once again, like, I'm not trying to sound like, hokey pokey, whatever, but it's true. You look at the amount of people out there, especially in your industry, where it's like that quick, like, here's 5 tips on how to boost mobility here through a reel, like an Instagram reel,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you're taking all of your teachings for almost 20 years now, and you're applying it in a way, or you're processing that for somebody who might look at it and say, I don't know if this is for me, in a way that is
Yeah.
palatable.
And I think that's also why it's like My Mate's Yoga app. I want it to be something that's like people look at and it's like they're doing it with their friend. They're doing it with someone where it's like, okay, I don't have to feel intimidated by the practice, or I don't have to be, or it can be intimidating to go to a studio, but here it's like, okay, I'm safe, I'm at home, I'm with my mate. That's kind of like the vibe that I'm going for. But it's like rooted in like knowledge and experience.
Yeah. So what would you say to somebody who is wondering, like, oh, I want to get into yoga, I've never done it before, especially on an app primarily versus like a studio, whereas if you're in
Yeah.
person, like, what would you say to somebody who's kind of like, I don't know how to approach that to get into
Yeah, well, there's a 7-day trial, so
that? Go now.
7 days full access, and the magic's there.
Do you like filming content?
Filming classes, it's very different than rocking up to the studio and teaching in person.
Hmm.
Obviously, like in person, you have that immediate feedback, like energetically, and that kind of like also helps to feed where I bring everyone. And being in front of the camera just means I have to be very clear with where I'm going. And I don't want to say I'm not clear when I'm teaching a class, but you have the flexibility or the malleability to
Yes.
create co-create, I like to say.
Yes.
And so when I'm in front of the camera, it's just a different skill that I'm still honing and developing. When it comes to like social media content, like I do love to create. It's just very time consuming.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Listen, I will say I noticed the shift in your content from like a few years ago to, I would say, in the last few, is when you started putting your voice online. Like, tell me
Yeah.
if I'm wrong. I may be at the timeline, but
Yeah, for sure.
I noticed that shift, and to where you are now, I would never know, like, I would never know that there was even a thought behind the content. Like, you're like, oh, it takes so much time, and whatever perceptions that you have of it. But to me, I'm like, Bruce seems very comfortable. Like, even coming into this, you're like, oh, like, nerves. I was like, how are you nervous? You literally put yourself online every day. Also, that's another
Yeah.
thing where I'm like, you're saying like, oh, I'm not consistent. I'm like, to me, you seem very consistent in your socials.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe it's just the most. Maybe it's not also that perfectionist in me. It's something that
Uh-huh.
I'm working with in therapy.
And so how are you getting over it? Because I know that I feel the same.
I think also that's kind of like that push from Harry with the launch of the app and just kind of like get it out there. It was having to let go of the idea that it needed to be perfect.
Hmm.
And then, even just like now with the rebranding I'm working with, I loved what it was, but things can evolve. And it kind of just goes back to what we were talking about earlier. It's like things have room to evolve and change. You're
Yes.
not like locked in. And, and I'm saying that out loud, the irony being like, well, then why are you a damn perfectionist? I am a work in progress.
Yeah. But
We all
listen,
are.
you're also at an early stage in the app, right? Where
Hmm. Hmm.
it's not like you have 100,000 subscribers. Maybe you do, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying? Where you're at an
Yeah.
early enough stage that going through a, let's say, not even a rebrand or like a refresh, the timing is still malleable in the sense of that branding element. I'm not that I have to tell you this, but like it's okay to let go and to feel like
Yeah.
you can tweak as you go. I went into the podcast with that same energy where it's
For
not going to be
sure.
perfect. I look at the first episode to
I
now and
love that.
it's already
Your
evolved.
sister's hilarious.
Oh, oh, I'm glad you listened.
Yeah, of course. I'm there to support.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that's been a learning experience for me. Not that I expected it to like be a hit right away,
Mhm.
but I was also a little bit like, oh, okay, it's out there. There's still more work to do.
Always.
And I'm not like, please no, I'm not naive, but I just maybe had a different idea of like what would have happened. And it's only been a few months, and people are like, actually, someone today, and it was actually, it meant so much to me that he was like, he came up to me. It's like someone working at one of the studios that I work for. He's like, I love your app, or I love seeing you working on this thing. And he's like, I just have so much faith that it's going to do so well. And I was like, oh my god, like that means so much to me. Thank you. Because at
Mhm.
times I'm like, I just want to like throw in the towel. Like not really, but you kind of like, you're called to ask yourself, like, is this really what I want to do? And I mean, the short answer is yes, but it does mean that I need to like pour more energy into it. And it's like that also requires my courage in stepping back from teaching as many classes I do in person, because it's like I can't expect my app to grow if I'm not putting my energy into the app.
Mhm.
But there's this like, it's like this really interesting space, because it's like when I start to pull back a little bit from teaching my normal schedule, it means I'm going to have to make these like small sacrifices, in my lifestyle. And it's not huge, but I'm just like, oh, I like nice things.
Listen, sometimes you have to take that risk, right? Where,
No, for sure.
like you have to do a little bit of extra unpaid work to get to where you want. And going back to what you said with that person's feedback and making you feel some type of way about it, sometimes when we're putting something out there, especially in the early days, it can feel, especially within the online world where there's so much noise, there's so much content, there's so much out there. It feels like you're screaming into the void a little bit. You're like, who's
Yeah.
actually listening? And
Yeah.
who is connecting with what I'm putting out there? And on that note, like those moments from people or the universe, however you want to look at it, that tell you like you're on the right path, and you get that those little tings of like, validation of like, yes, I am where I'm supposed to be. I recently had somebody where I was at an event. I'm only 3 months in, maybe 3.5 months. Like it's really
Hmm.
not been that
Hmm.
long of me doing this. So I don't have a following. Like I don't. Like I have maybe 20 people that listen on a regular basis, which love you all. You mean the world to me. But I was leaving an event. It was like a function outside. I was with my sister, my partner, and another friend. And we're walking out and I got stopped. And I don't know this person. And he goes, "Hey," he's like, "I listened to your podcast." And I was like,
Wow.
"What?" And he goes, "I really like what you're doing. You ask meaningful questions. Like you ask really
Mm.
meaningful questions and keep doing what you're doing." And I was like, I didn't even know how to process that in the moment because I was like, "What? That's
I
wild to me."
love
But
that.
exact,
Congrats.
yeah, it was. I mean, and to me, it was like, and I love that I had people there to prove that it was real.
Yeah,
To
yeah,
be
yeah.
like, this
Yeah.
happened. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like what you said with your situation where you have somebody say like, I really love what you're doing. Like
Yeah.
it's connecting with somebody, and that in itself is telling you you are doing the right thing, even though it
For
will take
sure.
some personal sacrifice, right?
Yeah. I love that. And I think, like, separate to the online space, like for me, when I'm teaching classes, sometimes, you have like days where you're like, "Ugh, like, why am I doing this? This is
Mm,
like, sometimes it is exhausting because whatever is going on in your personal life, but you got to show up. And then you just have that one student that comes up to you and says, I really needed that.
yeah.
Today I was going through a lot, and you really helped shift things for me. And it's like, okay, like, yes, thank you for reminding me why I'm doing this.
Absolutely. We are nearing the end. I can't believe we've been talking for over an hour already. It's gone
Wow.
by so fast. So my final segment.
Yeah.
I ask this to every person.
Yeah.
I've given you time to think about it. The
Mhm,
first
mhm.
few, I did not prompt them. I literally just asked them in person. So I've changed my ways and I've realized I need to give people a bit of a heads up so they have time to think.
Well, I've
So
also listened to the podcast enough to know, like,
it's coming.
I'm preparing for this answer, this question.
Okay, good. So on that note, so what would you say if you looked at your life in general? What is the most on brand thing about you?
Tardiness. I am always late. I am like the worst, the worst. I am always late that I have literally missed trains and planes.
Hmm.
The last train I missed 2 months ago, my boyfriend was mad at me because he was on the because we left separately and I didn't make it in time for the train, and
So he's on it and you're not?
he's on it and I'm not, and he is furious with me. Um, so my tardiness has into trouble.
So as the son of a perpetually late person,
Yeah.
who was traumatized always being late at school and being yelled at for being late when it was literally not my fault because I did not drive. Why are you always late? I'm curious.
Yeah, I like to maximize wherever I am before having to be somewhere
Do you love to
else.
luxuriate? Like you're like, yeah, I just gotta.
Well, I'm just like, oh, I have this much time in the day. I want to do all of these things, and no one's going to tell me I can't squeeze in as much as I can.
But then you're squeezing out parts of the future.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I remember that day as well. Like I taught a class, and instead of going straight home, I was like, I still have time for breakfast. So I hung around at the studio having breakfast at the cafe and ended up not having enough time to pack.
That's something that you're gonna have to figure out.
Yeah, a work in progress.
Yes,
Yeah.
of course. I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to
Thank
do this.
you.
Like, it means the world to me. Anytime any one of my friends who's, living their lives being busy and carving out their own path, like to take out time to chat with me on this like new venture, it just means the world to me.
Honestly, it's a huge privilege to have been invited. So thank you, Gio.
Oh, thank you so much. So, if anybody listening wants to contact you, get in touch, find the app, reach out to you,
Mhm.
where can they find you?
Yeah, I mean on Instagram, it's at Bruce Chung Yoga, at My Mates Yoga app, mymatesyoga.app.com. I'd say that's how you can get in touch with me directly.
And if you want to reach out to me about design, you can find me through my website at geographic.com. Follow and subscribe to the podcast. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Leave a comment. Leave a review on Spotify. I would love that. Help with the algorithm. Bruce, I just want to thank you so much for doing this again, and we'll talk soon.
Thank
Bye.
you.